The GPS said I had 2 minutes until arrival, 2 minutes before the county overload shelter closed their doors at 5 p.m. on a Friday and cleared the list. A euphemism I didn't fully understand yet, but one that made my foot press harder on the accelerator. I'd been scrolling through adoption websites for weeks looking for a companion after my divorce left me with an empty house that echoed with silence. When I saw him, a Siberian Husky named Copper, listed as special needs, adoption fee waived, something in his blue eyes called to me through the pixelated screen. The photo showed a dog with patchy fur, but nothing that seemed alarming. The description was sparse. Adult male, needs experienced owner, minor skin condition. Minor. That word would haunt me. I pulled into the back parking lot at 4:58 p.m., my Honda Civic bouncing over potholes that looked like they hadn't been filled since the 90s. The building was a squat, concrete structure with barred windows and graffiti on the sidewall that someone had half-heartedly painted over. The sound hit me before I even opened my car door, a cacophony of barking, howling, and metal clanging that seemed to vibrate through the ground itself. Inside, the smell was worse than the noise. Ammonia burned my nostrils, mixed with something organic and rotten that made my stomach turn. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow-green tint. A woman sat behind a plexiglass window, her face buried in her phone, her nails clicking against the screen. "I'm here for Copper," I said, trying to sound confident. "The Husky. I submitted an application online." She didn't look up. "Name?" "Clara Donovan." Her fingers moved across a keyboard with the enthusiasm of someone who'd rather be literally anywhere else. "Says here he's in medical hold." My heart sank. "The website said he was available today. That's why I rushed here." "Yeah, well," she shrugged. "Sometimes the website isn't updated. Do you want to see him or not?" "Yes, please." She buzzed me through a metal door that screamed on its hinges. The hallway beyond was dimly lit, lined with cages stacked too high. Dogs pressed against the chain link, paws reaching through, eyes desperate. A pit bull with scars across his muzzle, a German shepherd missing an ear, a small terrier mix shaking so violently I could see it from 6 feet away. And then I saw it. At the end of the hallway, pushed into a corner near the janitor's closet, was a cage covered with a heavy tarp, the kind movers use for furniture. The tarp wasn't just draped over it, it was tucked in tight, sealed, as if whoever put it there wanted to make absolutely sure nothing could be seen or smelled. Because even under the tarp, even with the overwhelming ammonia stench of the shelter, I could smell something wrong. Something like meat left in the sun. Something dying. "Is that him?" I asked, pointing. The woman had followed me in, her arms crossed. "Look, I'm gonna be straight with you. That dog is beyond saving. We've had him 4 months, and he just keeps getting worse. The vet says it's expensive to treat, and we don't have the budget. If I were you, I'd pick a different dog. We've got a nice lab mix up front." I wasn't listening anymore. I was already walking toward the tarp. "Miss, I really don't think—" I pulled it back. The creature in the cage wasn't a dog. It couldn't be. Dogs had fur, had skin that looked like skin, had eyes that held some spark of life. This thing was a living nightmare. Where there should have been the thick double coat of a Siberian Husky, that gorgeous silver and white fur that catches the light like fresh snow, there was nothing, just skin, but not even healthy skin. This was cracked, blackened leather stretched over bones that protruded at sharp angles. The texture reminded me of tree bark, of something that had been burned and left to rot. In places, the skin had split open, weeping clear fluid that mixed with blood and something yellowish-green that I would later learn was pus. The dog, Copper, I had to remind myself this was Copper, was curled in the back corner of the cage, shivering despite the stuffy heat of the hallway. His eyes were crusted shut with discharge. His ears, which should have been pointed and alert, were folded back against his skull, the edges raw and bleeding where he'd scratched at them. The smell that emanated from the cage was beyond description. Imagine roadkill mixed with infected wound drainage and the sour stench of fear. And he was lying in his own waste. A puddle of diarrhea spread beneath him, soaking into what looked like a towel that hadn't been changed in days, maybe weeks. "How long has he been like this?" My voice came out as a whisper. The woman, her name tag said Janet, shelter manager, sighed. "He came in with a little skin patch. We quarantined him because we thought it might be contagious, ringworm or something. But it just kept spreading, and the vet said treatment would cost more than the dog is worth. So," she shrugged again, that same careless gesture that made my blood boil. "So you just left him here to die?" "We don't have unlimited resources, Miss Donovan. We have to make tough choices. Some animals just can't be saved, and we have to focus on the ones we can adopt out. It's not personal, it's practical." I looked at the cage again, at the medical chart hanging from a clipboard on the front. It was marked with neat checkboxes. Health check, weekly. Every single week for the past 16 weeks had a check mark and an initial. Stable. 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 The dog in front of me was anything but stable. He was dying. "Who signed these?" I asked, pointing at the chart. Janet shifted uncomfortably. "Different volunteers. Look, they check to make sure the dog is still breathing and has water. That's all we can do with our staffing levels." "They didn't look at him." I was shaking now, not from fear, but from rage. Not once in 4 months did anyone actually look at this dog and think, "Hey, maybe we should do something." "Miss Donovan, I understand you're upset, but—" "I'm taking him." "You can't. He's in medical hold. He hasn't been cleared for adoption." "Then clear him. Right now." Janet's eyes narrowed. "The adoption fee is waived, but you'll have to sign a liability release, and you'll need to understand that this dog probably won't survive. We're actually scheduled to euthanize him Monday morning. You'd be taking on a very expensive vet bill for a dog that's likely going to die anyway." I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. The cage, the tarp, the medical chart, Copper's destroyed body. Janet's face went white. "What are you doing?" "Documenting." I looked her straight in the eye. "Get me the paperwork, now." 20 minutes later, I carried a dog out of that shelter who weighed maybe 30 pounds when he should have weighed 60. He didn't fight me. He didn't even seem to register that he was moving. His body was limped in my arms, and I could feel every single rib, every vertebra of his spine. His head lolled against my chest, and I realized he didn't have the strength to hold it up himself. In my car, I laid him across the back seat on a blanket I kept for emergencies. His breathing was shallow and rapid, his chest rising and falling like a bird's. His eyes were still crusted shut, but as I started the engine, one of them cracked open just a sliver, and I swear, in that moment, he looked at me with something that might have been hope. Dr. Amanda Smith worked at the 24-hour emergency veterinary clinic on the east side of town. I'd called ahead from the parking lot, my voice breaking as I tried to describe what I was bringing in. She met me at the door, her face carefully neutral in that way medical professionals have when they're preparing for the worst. When I carried Copper through the door, her neutrality cracked. "Oh my God," she breathed. "How long has he been like this?" 4 months. At least that's how long the shelter had him. Her jaw tightened. "Bring him back. Exam room 3. The next hour was a blur of medical terminology and gentle hands. Dr. Smith worked with an efficiency born of years of emergency medicine, but I could see the anger in the set of her shoulders, the way her hands trembled slightly as she performed a skin scraping. "I need to take several samples," she explained, her voice tight. "I can see what this is, but I need to confirm it and rule out co-infections." "What is it?" "Demodectic mange. complicated by what looks like a massive staph infection, probably some yeast overgrowth, and God knows what else. She held up a slide to the light, then put it under a microscope. Come look at this. I peered through the eyepiece and saw what looked like tiny cigars with legs crawling across the field of view. Those are Demodex mites, Dr. Smith said. Every dog has some. They live in hair follicles and are usually kept in check by a healthy immune system. But when a dog is stressed, and I mean severely stressed, chronically stressed, the immune system crashes. The mites reproduce out of control. They damage the hair follicles and the hair falls out. So the mange caused this? The mange started it, but Clara, can I call you Clara? I nodded. The mange itself isn't what destroyed this dog. Look at his skin. She gently lifted Copper's front leg, and I saw that the skin on his elbow was thickened to almost half an inch, cracked and oozing. This is called lichenification. The skin thickens to protect itself, but it also cracks, which allows bacteria to enter. Staphylococcus, in this case, a normal skin bacteria that becomes pathogenic when the skin barrier is destroyed. She walked to a cabinet and pulled out a bottle of medicated shampoo and a small vial of medication. This is ivermectin. It kills the mites. This is a chlorhexidine shampoo with antibacterial properties. Together, along with oral antibiotics and antifungals, they would have stopped this progression in its tracks. I stared at the bottles. How much does this cost? The ivermectin is about $15 for a month's supply. The shampoo is $12. The antibiotics, maybe $30. $57, less than the adoption fee the shelter had waived. This wasn't a disease that killed his fur, Dr. Smith said, her voice hard. This was isolation in a damp, dirty kennel with no medical intervention. This dog has been slowly dying of something completely preventable for months while people checked boxes on a form and walked away. She began setting up an IV line. He's severely dehydrated and malnourished. His protein levels are going to be in the gutter. The skin is weeping so much fluid that his body is literally losing the building blocks it needs to survive. We need to stabilize him tonight, get fluids and antibiotics on board, and then you're going to have months of intensive care ahead of you. Will he live? Dr. Smith's eyes met mine, and I saw something fierce there. If he's survived this long, he's a fighter. Yes, Clara, I think we can save him, but it's going to be hard, really hard. Are you prepared for that? I looked at Copper, lying on the exam table, his ravaged body finally being treated with the care he deserved. I didn't come this far to give up on him now. Good, Dr. Smith smiled for the first time, because I think Copper here has decided he's not ready to give up either. While Copper was stabilized overnight at the emergency clinic, fluids, antibiotics, pain medication, and a gentle cleaning of his worst wounds, I went home and did something that would change everything. I read his shelter records. Janet had reluctantly handed over copies when I signed the adoption papers, probably thinking I'd never actually look at them, but I spread them across my kitchen table at midnight, a cup of coffee going cold at my elbow, and I started to piece together the story of how a dog could be tortured to death by bureaucracy. The intake form was dated September 15th, 4 months ago. Copper had been brought in as a stray, found wandering a rural highway. The description noted, adult male Siberian Husky, approximately 3 to 4 years old, good body condition, friendly temperament, minor skin irritation on right shoulder, approximately 2 inches in diameter. Recommend routine vet check. Minor skin irritation, 2 inches. The next document was a quarantine order dated September 17th. Due to unknown skin condition, animal placed in medical isolation pending veterinary evaluation to rule out contagious disease, ringworm or sarcoptic mange. The vet evaluation came 3 days later. A Dr. Robert Williams had written, skin scraping negative for ringworm and sarcoptic mange, findings consistent with localized Demodex overgrowth, likely stress-related. Recommend ivermectin treatment, medicated bathing 2 times weekly, recheck in 14 days. Then, nothing. No record of ivermectin being administered, no bathing log, no recheck appointment. But there were health check forms. Oh, there were plenty of those. Every single week, someone had initialed a form confirming they had visually assessed Copper and found him stable. I pulled out my phone and looked at the photos I'd taken. I lined them up next to the word stable on the forms. Week 4, stable. In my photo, Copper's fur had thinned noticeably, and the skin patch had spread to cover his entire shoulder blade. Week 8, stable. The fur loss had spread down his front legs, the skin was beginning to darken and crack. Week 12, stable. 3/4 of his body was hairless. The smell would have been noticeable from 10 feet away. Week 16, stable. The dog I'd found under the tarp. I grabbed my laptop and started researching. I found articles about shelter oversight, about the regulations that were supposed to protect animals in county facilities. I found the budgets, public records showing that the county overload shelter received $150,000 annually specifically for veterinary care. And I found something else. A scandal from 2 years ago where another shelter in the state had been shut down for gross negligence and misappropriation of medical funds. The director had been funneling the vet care budget into administrative salaries while animals died of treatable conditions. I looked at those weekly forms again, at the different initials, at the perfect consistency of the word stable when the dog was anything but. They weren't just neglecting Copper, they were actively covering it up, pencil whipping forms to create a paper trail that said they'd provided care, when in reality they'd shoved a dying dog in a back hallway and waited for nature to take its course. By the time the sun came up, I had a folder 3 inches thick. Medical records, photos, budget documents, regulations they'd violated, and I had a plan. But first, I had to bring Copper home. Dr. Smith released Copper the next morning with a stack of medications, a detailed care plan, and a warning that made my stomach clench. "The first bath is going to be traumatic," she said, loading syringes of injectable antibiotics into a cooler bag. "For both of you. His skin is so damaged that even warm water is going to hurt. And he's been in that cage for so long, he's not going to understand that you're helping him." She handed me a box of nitrile gloves and a bottle of prescription-strength pain medication. "Give him this 30 minutes before the bath. Wear the gloves. His skin is going to shed, and there's a lot of bacteria involved. You'll need to soak him for at least 15 minutes to soften the crusted areas, then use this shampoo." She held up a purple bottle. "Lather it in, let it sit for 10 minutes, then rinse thoroughly. You'll need to do this every other day for at least 2 weeks." Copper was carried to my car in a soft-sided crate, still too weak to walk. The drive home was quiet except for his labored breathing. I'd set up a quarantine area in my bathroom. Easy-to-clean tile, warm but not hot, with soft blankets and a heated pad set on low. That evening, after the pain medication had time to work, I carried Copper to the bathtub. He weighed so little that it felt like holding a skeleton wrapped in leather. I'd filled the tub with 4 inches of lukewarm water mixed with the medicated shampoo, creating a gentle soak. The moment his paws touched the water, Copper screamed. I don't mean barked or whined, I mean screamed, a sound I didn't know dogs could make, high-pitched and full of terror and agony. His body convulsed, trying to escape, but he was too weak to do more than tremble violently in my arms. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I'm so sorry, but we have to do this." I lowered him into the water, supporting his weight so he wouldn't slip. The water immediately turned pink, then brown, as blood and discharge and God knows what else began to leach from his skin. The crusted areas, thick plates of dead skin and dried pus, began to soften and slough off in chunks. Copper's screams turned to whimpers. His one open eye rolled back in his head, and for a horrible moment, I thought he was dying. But his chest still moved, rapid, shallow breaths that showed he was conscious, just overwhelmed by sensation after months of being touch-starved and pain-racked. I'd put on the gloves Dr. Smith gave me, and I started to gently massage the shampoo into his skin, working it into the cracks and crevices. Everywhere I touched, skin came away. Not in small flakes like normal shedding, but in sheets, in patches, revealing raw pink flesh underneath that oozed clear fluid mixed with blood. The water had to be changed 3 times before it ran clear. By the end, Copper was shaking so hard his teeth were chattering. I lifted him out, even lighter now that pounds of dead skin had been washed away, and wrapped him in a warm towel. He collapsed against my chest, too exhausted to even whimper anymore. I sat on the bathroom floor, this broken dog wrapped in my arms, and I understood something Dr. Smith had tried to tell me. Copper wasn't just physically damaged. The shelter hadn't just broken his body with neglect. They'd broken his ability to trust that a human touch could be anything other than pain. The physical healing was going to take months, but in those first few weeks, I realized that Copper's body wasn't the deepest wound.
His mind was shattered. A dog who'd spent 4 months in a 3x4 cage doesn't know what to do with space. That first night, I set up a comfortable dog bed in the bathroom. Orthopedic foam, heated pad underneath, soft blankets on top. Copper wouldn't go near it. Instead, he wedged himself into the corner between the toilet and the wall in a space barely large enough for his emaciated body, and he circled, around and around, tight clockwise circles, his raw nose nearly touching his tail. I tried to coax him out. I put food near him, water, special treats, but Dr. Smith said would help build his strength. He ignored all of it, continuing his endless circling. It was Dr. Smith who explained it on our first follow-up visit. "It's called kennel crazy," she said, examining Copper's skin, which was already showing signs of improvement. The angry red was fading to pink in places, and the oozing had decreased. Dogs are intelligent, social animals. They need mental stimulation, physical exercise, and social bonding. When you deprive them of all 3 for an extended period, their minds break down. The circling is a stereotypy, a repetitive behavior with no purpose except to self-soothe. Will it stop? Eventually, maybe. But Clara, you need to understand that some of this damage might be permanent. He's been traumatized in ways that go beyond the physical. You're not just nursing a sick dog back to health. You're trying to teach him how to be a dog again. That became my mission. Not just medicating, bathing, feeding, but teaching. I started small. I would sit on the bathroom floor, because Copper wouldn't leave the bathroom, wouldn't even approach the open door to see the rest of the house, and I would just exist near him. Not touching, not talking, just being present. For hours, I sat there, reading books on my phone, working on my laptop, eating my meals on the tile floor. It took 3 days before Copper stopped circling when I was in the room. It took a week before he would eat with me present. It took 2 weeks before he would take food from my hand, and even then he would snatch it and retreat to his corner, as if I'd change my mind and punish him for accepting it. The world beyond the bathroom might as well have been another planet. I tried once in week 3 to carry him outside to the grass. The moment his paws touched the lawn, he defecated in terror and tried to crawl back inside, his nails scrabbling against the concrete patio so hard that he tore one off, leaving a trail of blood. Dr. Smith had told me this might happen. He's been on concrete for months, she'd explained. The feel of grass is completely foreign. He doesn't know if it's safe. Everything is a potential threat. So I brought the outside to him. A patch of sod in a plastic tray, placed in the bathroom. It took days before Copper would even sniff it. A week before he would stand on it.
2 weeks before he urinated on it, this tiny victory that made me cry with relief because it meant some part of his brain remembered what grass was for. But the worst part, the part that broke my heart every single day, was that Copper didn't know how to play. I'd bought toys, squeaky toys, rope toys, puzzle toys. I'd show them to him, demonstrate how they worked. He would watch me with that one open eye, the other was healing but still crusted, and there was nothing. No curiosity, no interest, no joy. He'd forgotten what joy was. A Siberian Husky is supposed to be energetic, vocal, playful. They're the comedians of the dog world, the escape artists, the drama queens who talk to their owners in elaborate wooing and whining conversations. Copper was silent, always silent. Even when the medicated baths hurt, even when I had to give him injections, even when I knew he was in pain. Silence. It was as if the shelter had stolen his voice along with everything else. I wondered if I would ever hear him make a sound that wasn't a scream of agony. I was giving Copper his evening medications, week 4, and his skin was finally starting to show real improvement, new hair follicles visible as tiny black dots across his pink skin, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Clara Donovan?" A man's voice, formal, cold. "Yes?" "This is Martin Reynolds, legal counsel for County Overload Shelter. I'm calling to inform you that you are in possession of county property that was not legally released to you." My blood ran cold. "Excuse me?" "The animal designated as Copper was not cleared for adoption at the time you removed him from the facility. You signed a liability waiver, but the shelter manager did not have the authority to override a medical hold. We're requiring you to return the animal immediately for proper evaluation and disposition." Disposition? The word tasted like poison. "You mean euthanasia?" "The animal's medical condition requires professional assessment. If you do not return him within 48 hours, we will be forced to involve law enforcement for theft of county property." I was shaking. "You left him to rot for 4 months. You have weekly health checks signed off by people who never even looked at him. You violated your own regulations and misused county funds designated for medical care. And now you want him back so you can kill him and destroy the evidence." There was a pause. "Miss Donovan, I would be very careful about making defamatory accusations." "They're not accusations. They're facts, and I have documentation to prove it." "Nevertheless, the animal is county property. We'll be sending an officer to retrieve him on Monday morning. If you resist, you will be charged with obstruction and theft." He hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, Copper watching me from his corner with that one healing eye. He'd started to make eye contact in the last week, this tiny sign of returning trust. They wanted to take him back. They wanted to kill him, not because he was suffering. He was healing, but because letting him live meant admitting what they'd done. A dead dog couldn't testify to neglect. A dead dog couldn't be photographed, couldn't be exhibited as evidence of systemic failure. I pulled up my browser and started searching for animal rights attorneys. It was Saturday night. I had less than 36 hours. The first 3 lawyers I called went to voicemail. The 4th answered on the 3rd ring, her voice tired. "Rebecca Ortiz, Animal Law." I explained the situation in a rush. The shelter, the neglect, the photos, the threat. "Do you have proof of the condition he was in when you took him?" she asked. "Photos, video, medical records from my vet showing the extent of the damage. And I have the shelter's own records showing they documented weekly health checks while he was dying." "And they're claiming you stole him?" "They're saying the shelter manager didn't have authority to release him because he was on medical hold." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. I need you to email me everything you have. Photos, records, receipts, everything. Tonight. Then tomorrow, we're going to file an emergency petition for a restraining order preventing them from taking the dog. We'll argue that returning him to their custody constitutes imminent danger to an animal, which is grounds for intervention. Will it work? I don't know. But, Clara, I'm going to be straight with you. This is going to get ugly. If we fight this, we're not just fighting for one dog. We're accusing a county facility of animal cruelty and fraud. They're going to come at you with everything they have. I looked at Copper, at the new pink skin growing where leather had been, at the tiny tufts of silver-white fur starting to emerge around his eyes, at the way he was watching me, no longer with the blank stare of a creature waiting to die, but with something that almost looked like hope. I'm not giving him back, I said. Good. Let's go to war. Sunday morning, I woke to a sound I'd never heard before. It was 6 a.m., and I'd fallen asleep on the bathroom floor again, wrapped in a sleeping bag next to Copper's bed. He'd finally started sleeping on the bed instead of in the corner, though he still circled 3 times before lying down. Some habits die hard. The sound was soft, tentative, a tiny woo, woo, woo. I opened my eyes. Copper was sitting up, facing the small window above the bathtub. The morning sun was streaming through, catching the dust motes in the air, painting everything gold. And Copper, his healing face turned toward the light, was making the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Husky talk, the signature vocalization of his breed. Not quite a howl, not quite a bark, but a melodious talking sound that they use to communicate with their pack. "Copper," I whispered. He turned to look at me, and for the first time, both eyes were open, fully open, clear. The infection had finally cleared, and I could see that his left eye was blue, his right eye brown. Heterochromia, a trait common in huskies and absolutely stunning. And he talked to me. Woo, 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 woo. I burst into tears. After 4 weeks of silence, after a month of this broken dog making no sound except screams of pain, he was talking. He was communicating. He was being a husky. I slowly extended my hand, moving carefully, giving him time to retreat if he needed to. He stretched his neck forward, and for the first time, he sniffed my fingers voluntarily. Then, so gently I almost didn't feel it, he licked my palm. The medication was working. Not just the antibiotics and antiparasitics, not just the medicated baths and the special diet, but the medicine of time, of consistency, of a clean space and gentle hands, and the absence of the chronic stress that had destroyed his immune system in the first place. His skin, which was angry red and black, was now mostly pink with patches of healthy white. The cracks had sealed, the oozing had stopped, and the hair, oh God, the hair was coming back. It started as soft fuzz, like peach skin, barely visible, but in the sunlight I could see it. Silver and white and black, the characteristic husky coloring, sprouting from thousands of renewed follicles. That afternoon, I tried something new. I opened the bathroom door and sat in the hallway just outside, reading a book. Copper watched from his bed, his newly clear eyes tracking my every movement. After 20 minutes, he stood up. Slowly, shakily, his muscles were still rebuilding, he walked to the doorway. He stopped at the threshold, one paw on the bathroom tile, one paw on the hallway carpet. And he looked at me as if to ask, "Is this allowed?" "It's okay, baby," I said softly. "The whole house is yours. You're safe here." He took one step into the hallway, then another. His legs were trembling, and I realized this was the most walking he'd done in months. 4 months in a cage that didn't allow him to even turn around properly. And now he was navigating open space. He made it 3 feet before his legs gave out, and he collapsed on the carpet, panting. But he was smiling, that open-mouthed, tongue-lolling expression that happy dogs wear. And he talked to me again, a string of wooing sounds that seemed to say, "I did it! Did you see? I walked!" I saw Copper. I'm so proud of you. That was the day I knew we were going to win. Not the legal battle. That was still pending, Rebecca working overtime to prepare our case. But the real battle, the fight for Copper's soul, for his will to live. He'd decided he wasn't done yet. And if he wasn't giving up, neither was I. The restraining order came through Monday morning, 2 hours before the county officer was scheduled to arrive. Rebecca called me at 8 a.m., her voice triumphant. We got it. Judge reviewed the photos and the medical records, and she agreed that returning Copper to the shelter constitutes imminent danger. They can't touch him pending a full hearing. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. How long do we have? Hearing is set for 2 weeks from now. In the meantime, we go on the offensive. You said you wanted to make sure this doesn't happen to other dogs. Yes? Then we're going public. I have contacts at the local news station. Are you ready for this to get big? I looked at Copper, who was sprawled on the living room rug. He'd made it all the way to the living room that morning, a journey of maybe 30 feet that left him exhausted but triumphant. His skin was healing beautifully, fur growing in thick now, and he'd gained 8 pounds. He looked less like a gargoyle and more like a very skinny dog. A dog with a future. I'm ready. The story broke on Wednesday evening news. The anchor, a woman named Lisa Jones, didn't pull punches. She stood outside the county overload shelter with a large photo of Copper, the before shot, the one I'd taken that first day with him under the tarp, and she told his story. Warning, some viewers may find these images disturbing. This is Copper, a Siberian Husky who spent 4 months in this shelter, allegedly receiving medical care while his condition deteriorated to the point that shelter staff covered his cage with a tarp to hide him from public view. The camera cut to an interview with Dr. Smith. This dog was suffering from completely treatable conditions, demodectic mange and secondary skin infections. The medications needed would have cost less than $60 total. Instead, he was left to die while staff signed weekly health forms claiming he was stable. Then, they showed the budget documents I'd obtained through public records requests. $150,000 allocated annually for veterinary care. Yet when we asked the shelter for records of how this money was spent, they provided invoices for only $23,000 in actual medical services. Where did the other $127,000 go? The story went viral. By Thursday morning, it was on national news. By Friday, the state's Animal Welfare Board announced they were launching an investigation. By Monday, there were protesters outside the shelter demanding accountability. And through it all, my phone rang constantly. Other people who'd adopted from county overload, telling me their own horror stories. Dogs adopted with minor medical issues that turned out to be advanced cancers, untreated broken bones, severe infections, a pattern of neglect so pervasive that it couldn't be accidental. Janet, the shelter manager, was placed on administrative leave. The county commissioner made a public statement about addressing systemic issues and ensuring animal welfare. It was bureaucratic nonsense, but it was a start. The hearing came and went. The judge didn't just deny the shelter's petition to reclaim Copper, she awarded me full legal ownership and ordered the county to pay my veterinary bills. All of them. But the biggest victory came 2 months later when the county announced the shelter would be shut down and all operations transferred to a network of foster-based rescues with mandatory veterinary oversight. Copper wouldn't be the last dog saved from that hellhole, but he might be the one whose suffering finally forced people to pay attention. 4 months after I brought Copper home, I took him back to Dr. Smith for a checkup. I'd been sending her weekly photos, watching her reactions go from cautiously optimistic to openly amazed, but she needed to see him in person. When I walked into the clinic, the receptionist didn't recognize us. "I'm here for Clara Donovan's appointment," I said. She looked at the stunning Siberian Husky standing calmly beside me, 62 pounds of muscle and fur, his coat a glorious explosion of silver and white with black accents, his heterochromatic eyes bright and alert. And she said, "I'm sorry, I have a copper on the schedule, but that can't be... Wait, that's copper?" Dr. Smith came out of the back, took one look, and stopped dead. Oh my God! He was magnificent. The skeletal gargoyle I'd carried out of the shelter had transformed into exactly what he was always meant to be, a powerful, beautiful Siberian Husky in his prime. His fur had come back thick and lush, the double coat fully restored. He held his head high, ears alert, tail up in the characteristic sickle curve. But he wasn't perfect. He would never be perfect. On his elbows, where the concrete floor of the shelter cage had rubbed his skin raw for months, the fur grew thin and patchy. The skin there was scarred, thickened, and hair follicles had been permanently damaged. I called them his badges of survival, permanent reminders of what he'd endured. He also had quirks. He still circled 3 times before lying down. He still wouldn't eat if the food bowl was in a corner. It had to be in the middle of the room where he could see all around. He startled at loud noises, and certain sounds, like metal clanging on metal, would send him into a panic. But he played. God, how he played. He discovered squeaky toys around month 3, and now he had a collection of them that he'd kill with enthusiastic shaking, his husky talk punctuating every play session. Woo, woo, woo! Squeak, squeak, squeak! He discovered the joy of zoomies, those random bursts of energy where he'd race around the backyard at full speed, bouncing off the fence, leaping over the garden beds, his mouth open in a huge smile. And he discovered the wonder of other dogs. I'd started taking him to a small, quiet dog park once his social skills improved, and watching him interact with other dogs was like watching a child discover friendship for the first time. Cautious at first, then increasingly confident, until he was play-bowing and chasing and wrestling with the enthusiasm of a puppy. Dr. Smith completed her examination, checking his skin, his eyes, his teeth, running her hands through his thick fur. "Clara, this is incredible. I've been a vet for 15 years, and I've never seen a recovery like this." "He did all the work," I said. "I just gave him the chance." "No," she looked at me seriously. "You gave him more than a chance. You gave him love, consistency, and the space to heal. A lot of people would have given up, would have decided he was too broken, too expensive, too much work. You didn't." I knelt down, and Copper immediately pressed against me, his head on my shoulder, a behavior he'd developed over the months, his version of a hug. "He was worth it," I whispered into his fur. Dr. Smith smiled. "Yes, he was." 6 months after I pulled back that tarp in the shelter hallway, I took Copper to a park. Not the small, quiet dog park we'd been visiting, but a real park. Wide open fields, a lake, hiking trails. It was a Saturday morning, the air crisp and clear, and I'd packed a backpack with water, treats, and all the supplies for a day outdoors. I was nervous. This was the biggest test yet. Could he handle the crowds, the space, the unpredictability? I shouldn't have worried. The moment we got out of the car, Copper's whole body quivered with excitement. His tail was up, his ears forward, and he did this little dance, front paws lifting off the ground and alternating steps, a bounce of pure joy. "Woo-roo-roo-roo-roo," he sang, his voice carrying across the parking lot. Other people turned to look and smile. There's something about a happy husky that's infectious. I unclipped his leash, we'd been working on recall for months, and he was solid now, and said the magic words, "Okay, Copper, go play." And he ran. God, he ran like the wind. His powerful legs ate up the ground, his fur streaming behind him like silver fire in the sunlight. He ran in huge circles, looping back to check on me, then zooming away again. He ran through the grass, through the shallow parts of the lake, splashing and biting at the water, discovering that water could be fun instead of painful. He ran past other dogs, pausing to sniff and bow and invite them to chase. He ran past families having picnics, past joggers, past a group of kids playing frisbee who laughed and cheered as he zoomed by. And I stood there, watching this miracle unfold, tears streaming down my face. Because I'd gone to that shelter 6 months ago looking for a companion. I'd wanted a dog to fill the silence in my house, to give me something to care for, to ease the loneliness. What I found was so much more than that. I found a survivor, a fighter, a dog who'd been pushed to the absolute limit of what a living creature can endure, and who chose to come back, who chose to trust again, to play again, to be himself again despite everything that had been done to him. Copper ran back to me, panting and grinning, and dropped a stick at my feet. I threw it, and he chased it with unbridled enthusiasm, returning it for another throw, then another, until we were both exhausted. We sat on a bench overlooking the lake, Copper sprawled at my feet, his head on my shoe, his eyes half closed in contentment. His fur caught the light, that beautiful silver and white coat that had grown back against all odds. The bald spots on his elbows were visible if you looked closely, those permanent badges of survival that told his story. A woman walked past with her own dog, a golden retriever. "Your husky is gorgeous," she said. "Where did you get him?" I could have said I adopted him from a shelter, could have kept it simple, light. But Copper's story deserved to be told. "I liberated him," I said, "from a county shelter that left him to die in a back hallway for 4 months. He had no fur left when I found him, just skin and bones and the will to survive." The woman's hand flew to her mouth. "That's horrible. But look at him now." "Look at him now," I agreed, watching Copper's chest rise and fall in peaceful sleep. He taught me something important. The loudest screams for help are often the ones made in total silence. The dogs in the back cages, the ones covered with tarps, the ones on the euthanasia list, those are the ones who need us most. She knelt down and gently petted Copper's head. He opened one eye, assessed that she was friendly, and went back to sleep. The trust of a dog who'd learned that not all humans were dangerous. "What happened to the shelter?" she asked. "It was shut down, replaced with a foster network with proper oversight, and the county implemented new regulations requiring weekly independent vet checks for every animal, with photos and detailed reports that can't be faked." "Because of Copper?" "Because of Copper," I confirmed. One dog suffering exposed a system that was failing hundreds of animals, and now that system is being rebuilt the right way. The woman smiled. "He's a hero." I looked at Copper, at this magnificent dog who'd been dismissed as beyond saving, who'd been left to rot while people walked past his cage every day and did nothing. This dog who'd survived because somewhere deep in his damaged body and broken mind, he'd held on to a tiny spark of hope that things could be different. "Yeah," I said softly, "he really is." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Copper woke up and stretched. He looked at the lake, then at me, then back at the lake, his expression clearly saying, "One more run?" I laughed. "Okay, buddy, one more run." And we ran together, side by side, a woman and her dog, both of us healing from our own traumas, both of us learning that the world could be kind again if you just had the courage to keep fighting. Copper had gone to the shelter as a dog with a minor skin patch and came out as a hairless skeleton waiting to die. But he'd left my house today as what he truly was. A Siberian Husky in all his glory, a testament to resilience, and a reminder that every animal, every single one, deserves a chance to be saved. Because sometimes, when you go looking for something to fill the emptiness in your life, you find something so much more important. You find a purpose, you find your voice, and you find the strength to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. Before I go, I will like to tell you how Copper's condition spiraled from a minor issue to a near-fatal crisis. This is crucial for anyone working with or adopting from shelters. The invisible decline. Stage 1, the stress trigger. When Copper entered the shelter, his body immediately responded to the environment. The constant barking, the smell of fear from other animals, the uncertainty. All of this triggered a massive release of cortisol, the stress hormone. In normal circumstances, cortisol helps the body respond to threats, but chronic stress means chronic cortisol elevation, which directly suppresses the immune system. Specifically, it reduces the number of T cells and other white blood cells that fight infections and keep opportunistic organisms in check. Every dog has Demodex mites living in their hair follicles. In a healthy dog, the immune system keeps their population minimal and harmless. But with Copper's immune system suppressed by stress, these mites began reproducing exponentially. Within weeks, they damaged enough hair follicles to cause visible hair loss. Stage 2. The humidity trap. Shelters are notoriously humid environments. Constant cleaning with water, poor ventilation, and multiple animals in close quarters create the perfect conditions for fungal and bacterial growth. Copper's cage was in a back hallway, likely the area with the worst airflow. When skin loses its protective hair coat, it needs to stay dry to maintain its barrier function. But in that damp kennel, Copper's exposed skin never had a chance to dry properly. Yeast organisms, which normally live on the skin in small numbers, found the warm, moist environment perfect for overgrowth. Yeast infections cause intense itching, leading to scratching, which creates more skin damage. Stage 3. The secondary invasion. Healthy skin is like a fortress wall, intact and impenetrable, but Copper's skin was now compromised by mite damage and constant moisture. When skin cracks, even microscopically, bacteria can enter. Staphylococcus aureus, a common skin bacterium, is normally harmless on intact skin, but give it an opening and it becomes a ruthless invader. The bacterial infection caused the distinctive rotting smell that shelter staff tried to hide with the tarp. This wasn't the smell of death, not yet. It was the smell of millions of bacteria producing waste products as they consumed damaged tissue. Stage 4. The total shutdown. By this stage, Copper's body was in survival mode. The skin, our largest organ, has multiple functions: protection, temperature regulation, sensation, and vitamin D production. When skin is this damaged, the body has to make terrible choices. To protect vital organs from infection, Copper's skin began to thicken, a process called lichenification. The skin became like leather, creating a physical barrier even though the normal cellular barrier had failed. But this thickening required protein, lots of it, and with the skin constantly weeping fluid, plasma, white blood cells, and proteins, Copper was losing the building blocks his body needed to survive faster than he could replace them through eating. This is why he became skeletal. His body was quite literally consuming itself to maintain that protective skin layer and keep vital organs functioning. Without intervention, dogs in this stage typically die of protein malnutrition or sepsis within weeks. How to protect shelter dogs. Be a second set of eyes. When you visit a shelter, resist the natural tendency to focus on the puppies and friendly dogs in the front kennels. Walk to the back. Look in the areas marked quarantine or medical hold or stray hold. These are where the vulnerable animals are kept and where neglect is most likely to occur because these animals aren't being shown to potential adopters. If you see an animal in distress, take photos, document the date and time, and report it to the shelter management and, if necessary, to local animal control or rescue organizations. Ask for the medical log. Shelters should maintain detailed medical records for every animal. If you see a dog with visible health issues, you have the right to ask about their treatment plan. Look for specific details. What medications? What dosages? When was the last vet check? If the staff is vague or can't produce documentation, that's a red flag. Contact local rescue groups who can advocate for the animal. understand the importance of sunlight. Vitamin D, produced when skin is exposed to sunlight, is crucial for immune function. It also has natural antimicrobial properties. Many skin conditions in shelter dogs could be prevented or minimized with just 15 to 30 minutes of outdoor time daily. UV light kills many bacteria and fungi, and fresh air helps dry skin that might otherwise stay damp. If you're volunteering at a shelter, advocate for outdoor time for all dogs, especially those with skin or immune issues. Support foster-based rescues. Traditional shelters, even well-run ones, are inherently stressful environments for animals. Foster-based rescues place animals directly in homes where they can receive individualized care, regular vet attention, and the low-stress environment that allows their immune systems to function normally. If you want to help shelter animals but can't adopt, consider fostering. If you can't foster, support foster-based rescues financially. They rely entirely on donations to provide medical care. Recognize the signs of neglect. Not all neglect is as obvious as Copper's case. Learn the signs: weight loss, dull coat, lethargy, untreated wounds, crusted eyes or nose, persistent coughing, limping. If you see these signs in shelter animals, document and report them. Remember that shelter staff are often overworked and understaffed. They may not be deliberately cruel, but the system can fail animals when there aren't enough resources or oversight. Copper wasn't born sick. He was made sick by a system that prioritized paperwork over actual care, that hid problems instead of solving them, that treated living, feeling creatures as inventory to be managed rather than lives to be protected. His story isn't unique. Right now, in shelters across the country, there are dogs sitting in back kennels, deteriorating from treatable conditions, while health check forms get signed by people who never actually look at them. But Copper's story also proves that change is possible. One person who refused to look away, who documented the truth and demanded accountability, helped shut down a failing system and build a better one. You can be that person. If you believe every shelter animal deserves a clean bed, proper medical care, and the chance to be seen as the individual they are, share Copper's story. Use it to start conversations in your community about shelter oversight and animal welfare standards. Visit your local shelter, not just to adopt, but to observe. Are the animals in the back receiving the same care as the ones in the front? Are medical records detailed and up to date? Is there adequate staffing and veterinary oversight? If you see problems, speak up. Contact rescue organizations, alert the media, file complaints with your county commissioners, volunteer to be part of the solution. Shelters desperately need responsible volunteers who can provide extra eyes and hands. And if you're considering adding a dog to your family, consider the ones who need you most. Not the cute puppies in the front window, but the senior dogs, the ones with medical issues, the ones who've been waiting the longest. These are the animals most at risk of ending up like Copper, forgotten, neglected, left to die in silence. Hit the subscribe button to join our mission of giving a voice to the voiceless. Every story we tell, every case of neglect we expose, every animal we save is a step toward a world where no dog has to suffer like Copper did. Together, we can make sure that every animal gets the chance Copper got, the chance to heal, to trust, to run in the sunlight with fur catching the wind, to be the magnificent creature they were always meant to be. We'll see you in the next rescue story, because there will be a next story, and the next, until there are no more dogs dying in the back kennels, covered by tarps, waiting for someone to care. Until then, we keep fighting. Thank you for listening to Copper's story.